Shannon B. Douglas. This is while we were asleep. So I'm traveling across the country. I flew from Ottawa to Vancouver a couple of weeks ago, spent a week in the lower mainland. I'm closing in on a week here on Vancouver Island. Bit of a respite at a friend's place. He's graciously let me use his trailer, which is parked in the yard. And that gives me an office space to do some writing and some work. Today I want to talk a little bit about, well, as I've been talking about, wokeness. And it's starting to actually get a little bit entertaining online, just to see how many people I can get to call me a racist or tell me I forgot my clanhood or, just for criticizing critical race theory. And people, they pull out all the stops, and I've just accepted now that it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to be a bigot, I'm going to be a racist, I'm going to be a transphobe. None of those words mean anything anymore because they've been so diluted. When someone's calling me a KKK member, I mean, I'm a left of center liberal. The more we dilute the, actual white supremacy by calling a centrist Canadian who's left of center a member of the KKK, the more cover we actually give for very racist groups, potentially violent individuals, to exist, because we've diluted the language. All right, so today, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, speaking about KKK, racism, and all those things. Protocols of the Elders of Zion was published in Serial in 1903 in a Russian newspaper, and it has been thoroughly debunked. It was a set of allegations or assertions about Jews in history, and they're conspiring to have privilege, to extract resources from the people that they supposedly exploited. Those fine Aryan Germans who bought into this and blamed the Jews for all their problems. This is not a new structure, historically speaking. Whenever societies divide, or when we get into identity politics, you've got a victim group. Those are the people playing for power, who falsely victimize, and then a group that they claim who are victimizing them. So the Germans grabbed onto this. Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a conspiracy theory that included allegations of blood libel, that Jews murdered Christian infants and drank their blood and all kinds of crazy stuff. And were responsible historically for all of the wrongs afflicting Germany. Right? We get this narrative today. It's the white privilege narrative. Right? I'm not saying that that there hasn't been racial divisions historically in North America, or that Europe hasn't experienced a period of history where it had some dominance of the world. However, this idea of systemic racism under the critical race theory banner simplifies history to the extent that I've seen clips online of teachers in the US giving professional development lectures to other teachers, telling other teachers that white people conspired to invent racism in order to oppress black people. And it would seem that if you follow that thought, that if white people hadn't invented racism, God, what an incredible world we'd live in. Right? So I guess we could argue that the Germans invented racism against the Jews, claiming that the Jews had racism against the Germans. But then what do we do about Rwanda and the Rwandan genocide, where that was actually racist, but it was two culturally different groups of blacks? And, the most recent genocide in history was black on black racism, driven by identity politics. So this notion that we have, this CRT, the ideas that they put forward hold about as much water when scrutinized as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. There's not an exaggeration here. It is a black and white narrative, I guess pun intended, that one group is automatically the oppressor and carries historic guilt or blood libel for crimes of the past. So I've been told I need to pay reparations for slavery, which seems strange to me because my ancestors only came here a couple of generations ago, fleeing group identity politics and the genocide in the Ukraine, Russia in the late 1920s. So I have some intergenerational memory and things that I've been taught growing up about what can go wrong when people start playing identity politics. And we're playing that politics now. This idea of we just need to teach history couched in CRT is garbage. We want to teach history? Let's teach history. That human beings, we play the same games over and over again. Identity politics. And when we start playing identity politics, lots of people die, unfortunately, because we entrench tribalism and we entrench hatred in one group against another group. So CRT is teaching in schools that Black, Indigenous people of color are historically oppressed by white people who invented racism in order to exploit them, and that us white people are a monolithic group, and we share this blood libel, this guilt of history that we all walk around with. So even if we're actually nice people, we're still white privileged. And our existence offends people who follow this CRT illogic, and it needs to be corrected. So this is what critical race theory is seeking to do. It's seeking to create equity for historic wrongs, and that means one racial group punishing another racial group with these narratives, and then with the kinds of things that are happening now widespread across Canada. My friend Chanel Fall has just published a piece on Woke Watch Canada about her experience online in a private teachers group online, where somebody asked to have materials, Black Lives Matter related materials, to teach in her classroom during Black History Month. Well, Black History Month is, it's important and fair to observe. However, Black Lives Matter is a leftist, self-described communist organization. It's a political activist group. And it's inappropriate to teach children activism. We would never allow either of our political parties to come in and say, okay, we're conservative, culturally conservative group, and we're going to determine the school curriculum, and we're going to teach that abortion is wrong and that God created the world in 7 days, and okay, that's a set of political and ideological beliefs. And we would never let purely capitalistic ideology to be taught in schools at the expense of all others. So my friend Chanel is being investigated because she said, okay, BLM is a political organization. Other jurisdictions are insisting that if there are lessons about BLM taught in a classroom, they have to be balanced with opposing political views to present children with the whole context to be able to give them a frame. Otherwise, it's brainwashing and ideological indoctrination. Well, Chanel is being investigated now a second time, and her teaching license in Ontario is at risk for saying something as innocuous as facts. The United Kingdom has banned the teaching of critical race theory unless it's complemented and recognized or described as a political organization, and a counterpoint is presented. That's a fact. And for saying that Black Lives Matter is a political organization, that's a fact. And for suggesting that a teacher use some discretion and not ideologically indoctrinate kids based on one view of the world, that's also a fact, is what teachers are doing. But you're not allowed to have this speech anymore because it violates these it affirms the protocols of the elders of Zion. It feeds into the conspiracy theory that white people invented racism, and that any narrative counter to the claims of CRT are suspect. It's wrongthink. And now the institutions and layers of bureaucracy have been infiltrated by ideologues, and people like Chanel, who face investigations, have to wait sometimes years in order for their arbitration cases to be heard. In the meantime, they're suspended, sometimes without pay. They're not allowed to talk to students. They're not allowed to talk to other teachers, and they're not allowed to talk to the public. And so they're gagged, they're censored, and they're unable to speak freely in a society that values free expression. I can't think of a worse thing to teach to kids, any child, that you're a victim of history. Life is never going to be fair to you because of your station in life. And the reason life is never going to be fair to you is because of those white people over there. Those white kids, they have white privilege, and their parents have white guilt, and their parents invented racism to oppress you black people. So because of this structural inequity, you, poor Johnny, or Dale, or Steve, or whatever the name is, you're a victim, and you'll always be a victim. And it's those white people's fault. Okay? Good German citizens, good white Aryans with blue eyes. Unfortunately, your economy is devastated. You know, the crops didn't come in. You're driving a 3-year-old mule and a dilapidated cart, and meanwhile, look those. The conspiracy says, oh, the Jews, it's all the Jews' fault. Well, we're playing the same conspiracy games now. We're playing the same narrative games. We're playing the same blame games, and this is institutionalized in our schools. My name is Shannon Douglas. This is While We Were Asleep. Have a look at what's going on in our schools, in our institutions. There is a very scary narrative that's pitting people in our society against other people, and it's dividing us. And it's going to get very painful unless we stand up and stop it.